The cardboard box slipped from my hands and burst open across the front porch, scattering old photographs, unpaid bills, a cracked coffee mug, and a faded house key onto the worn wooden steps. The woman standing beside me bent down without hesitation, carefully gathering every broken piece as though none of it was garbage. When I apologized for the mess, she looked at the empty house behind me instead of the clutter at her feet. I found myself whispering words I hadn't planned to say to anyone. I told her that she would turn any house into a home. She looked at me with the gentlest smile I had ever seen and quietly wondered if she should start with mine. In that single moment, every wall I had built around my heart began to crack. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change lives, please like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, share this story with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt journeys that remind us we are never truly alone. For almost 7 years, Alistair Boone had convinced himself that surviving was enough. He lived in the same weathered farmhouse his grandparents had left behind, a place surrounded by tall maple trees and wildflowers that bloomed faithfully every spring whether anyone admired them or not. From the road, the house looked peaceful, but inside it carried the silence of abandoned dreams. Dust rested on bookshelves where laughter once echoed. The dining table had only one chair in use. Every room seemed to wait for footsteps that never came. His marriage had ended quietly. There had been no dramatic betrayal, no shouting that shook the walls. Instead, years of grief after losing a child had slowly hollowed two loving people until they no longer recognized each other. His former wife eventually moved across the country, and although neither blamed the other, the separation left Alistair believing that some hearts simply could not be repaired once they shattered. He buried himself in woodworking because wood never lied. A crooked board could be straightened. A damaged table could be restored. Every crack revealed its history honestly. People were far more complicated. His small workshop became known throughout neighboring towns. Families brought him rocking chairs that belonged to grandparents, kitchen tables covered with decades of scratches, and old cabinets that deserved another generation of memories. Alistair restored each piece with remarkable patience, but he never noticed that while he repaired furniture for strangers, his own life remained unfinished. One warm Saturday morning, the local historical society organized a volunteer event to restore several neglected homes belonging to elderly residents. Alistair reluctantly agreed to help after his closest friend insisted that he spend one day around people instead of hiding behind sawdust. That was where he met Cora Ellison. She wasn't carrying expensive tools or issuing instructions. Instead, she was kneeling beside an elderly widow, repainting flower pots while laughing at stories about gardens that no longer existed. Children naturally gathered around her. Nervous volunteers relaxed when she smiled. Even tired homeowners seemed lighter after speaking with her for only a few minutes. Alistair noticed something unusual. Cora never focused on making houses prettier. She focused on making people feel seen. When lunch arrived, volunteers sat together beneath large oak trees. Most conversations revolved around renovation budgets and schedules. Cora asked different questions. She wanted to know everyone's favorite childhood meal, the happiest room they remembered growing up in, and what scent reminded them most of home. Alistair admitted that fresh bread cooling on his grandmother's windowsill still lived in his memory. She smiled as though he had shared a priceless treasure. Over the following weeks, their paths crossed again through community projects. Cora worked as an interior designer, but unlike television personalities chasing luxury homes, she specialized in helping struggling families create comforting spaces using what they already owned. She believed homes were built from stories rather than expensive furniture. One afternoon she visited Alistair's workshop with an old cedar chest inherited from her aunt. Instead of rushing through measurements, she admired every handmade tool hanging neatly on his walls. She asked about each one. No one had ever cared enough to ask. As he explained where every tool came from, memories he had buried surfaced naturally. His grandfather's steady hands. His father's patient lessons. The afternoons filled with laughter before grief changed everything. For the first time in years, speaking about the past hurt a little less. Their friendship grew quietly. They shared afternoon coffee after volunteer projects. They visited farmers' markets. They helped repaint playground benches. Neither rushed toward romance because both carried invisible scars. Cora had spent years caring for her mother through a long illness. After her mother's passing, she devoted herself to helping others create peaceful homes because she understood how deeply surroundings affected healing hearts. She recognized loneliness because she had lived beside it herself. Months later, she finally visited Alistair's farmhouse. The moment she stepped inside, she understood why he rarely invited anyone over. Nothing was dirty. Nothing was broken. Everything was simply paused. Family photographs remained stacked in boxes instead of frames. Curtains stayed closed despite brilliant sunshine outside. The kitchen held only one plate drying beside the sink. The piano hadn't been opened in years. It wasn't an abandoned house. It was a life waiting for permission to begin again. She never criticized. She never offered unsolicited advice. Instead, she opened every curtain, allowing warm daylight to pour across wooden floors that had forgotten what sunlight looked like. She placed fresh wildflowers inside an old glass jar. She moved a comfortable chair closer to the front window. The entire house seemed to exhale. Watching her, Alistair felt something impossible to explain. Without thinking, he spoke those unforgettable words. He told her she could turn any house into a home. She smiled with quiet warmth and wondered whether she should begin with his. His heart answered yes long before his voice found the courage. But healing rarely follows a straight path. Only days later, Alistair received unexpected news. The county planned to widen the nearby highway. His property stood directly within the proposed expansion zone. If approved, he would lose not only his workshop but the farmhouse that carried generations of family history. Neighbors advised him to accept compensation and move. Developers insisted progress required sacrifice. Reporters called it inevitable. Alistair stopped sleeping. Every board he repaired reminded him that he could not repair the place that had shaped his entire life. Fear slowly replaced hope. He withdrew from friends again. He ignored Cora's messages. He convinced himself that allowing someone into his heart right before losing everything else would only multiply the pain. Several weeks passed. Then one bright afternoon, another knock echoed across his porch. When he opened the door, dozens of people stood outside. Families whose furniture he had restored. Elderly couples he had helped without charging full price. Children whose playground benches he had repaired. Volunteers from countless community projects. Cora stood among them holding rolled blueprints. The Historical Society had discovered that the farmhouse qualified for preservation because of its century-old craftsmanship and its connection to regional history. Architects volunteered their expertise. Lawyers donated legal assistance. Neighbors collected signatures. Local businesses offered financial support. People whose lives Alistair had quietly touched were now determined to protect the home that had shaped him. He had spent years believing he lived alone. He suddenly realized he had been surrounded by family all along. The legal process lasted several difficult months, but persistence changed everything. The highway route was redesigned. The farmhouse remained standing. The workshop survived. The victory belonged not to one person but to an entire community refusing to let compassion disappear beneath asphalt. That autumn, Alistair finally did something he had postponed for years. He unpacked every dusty box of family photographs. Together, he and Cora filled empty walls with memories instead of hiding them. The dining table welcomed 6 chairs instead of 1. Fresh bread baked in the kitchen using his grandmother's handwritten recipe. Neighbors visited without invitations because the front door seemed permanently open. Children painted flower pots across the porch. Music returned to the old piano. The house hadn't become larger. It had simply become alive again. Months later, during the annual Harvest Festival, Alastair stood before friends and neighbors to thank everyone who had refused to let him surrender to loneliness. He admitted that he had mistaken independence for strength and silence for healing. Real courage, he realized, meant allowing others to carry part of your burden. As everyone applauded, Cora quietly slipped her hand into his. No grand speeches followed. No extravagant gestures. Only two people smiling beneath warm afternoon sunshine while surrounded by the people who had helped rebuild far more than a house. Years afterward, visitors often admired the farmhouse. They complimented its polished floors, restored porch, handmade furniture, and colorful gardens. Alastair always smiled politely before gently correcting them. The beautiful part wasn't the building. It was the people who filled it. Because walls could shelter bodies. Only love, forgiveness, generosity, and hope could shelter hearts. Before this story comes to its close, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever met someone who helped turn your life, not just your house, into a home? Leave a meaningful comment and share the lesson this story reminded you of, because your words may encourage someone who is struggling today. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. As another bright afternoon settled over the old farmhouse, laughter drifted through open windows, bread cooled beside blooming flowers, and children chased one another across the front yard where silence had once lived. Alastair paused on the porch, watching sunlight dance across the weathered wood that had witnessed grief, loneliness, courage, forgiveness, and love. He finally understood that a home is never measured by its walls or its age. It is measured by the hearts willing to keep its doors open. And every time someone chooses kindness over fear, hope over despair, or forgiveness over regret, another empty house somewhere in the world quietly begins its journey toward becoming a home.